Welcome. Welcome to the show, guys. Tonight on the Mrs ICanWin show, it is gonna be jam, wham, packed, and I hope you're looking forward to sharing some time and spending some time with us because we've got some interesting things to talk about. What's your thoughts, Queen?
On the interesting things?
On the interesting things on the show tonight, etc., etc.
It's gonna be healthy.
Healthy, I like that. I like that as a phrase. All right, guys. So look, let's just jump into the show straight away. First thing, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. If at any point during this video you feel like you're getting value, press the like button. Side by side with that, if you realize that these kind of conversations are going to be helpful and healthy for your future, feel free to hit subscribe. And side by side with that, if you are the kind of person like me who's ultra organized and you want to keep up to date with every single time that we drop a video, feel free to hit the bell notification, and that way you'll be kept up to date every single time we're dropping a video and every single time we're going live, because the live shows are live and they're the kind of opportunity where you get to actually engage, ask us questions, share your view in light of the same thing that we're talking about, which I think is extremely powerful.
Yep.
So tonight we're going to be talking about three
key things you need to do regarding your finances when it comes to being married, or regarding your marriage when it comes to doing finances.
Yeah, so tonight's show is the Finance for Real show. So with it being Finance for Real, we decided that we're going to speak to you guys about 3 must-dos for married couples. And these are as they pertain to the world of finance for these married couples, but these are 3 must-dos, not kinda do's, not wanna do's, not gonna do's, not shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but a must-do. And the reason they're must-dos is because I think in our experience, in our time, we've had and we've seen, we've heard of as well, like so many people who haven't done these things. And
issues.
Oh, you use the word issues, I'll just say it's drama.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the thing is why it's important is because something that Samuel and I both heard before we got married was that there were 3 things that caused divorce in marriage, for married people, and finances is actually one of them, and it's not finances on a whole, but it's the what's the word, the non-alignment of finances, the chaos of finances not being in order, that sector of things that causes divorce.
I think this is interesting. So in light of what you just said, before we even go into the 3 must-dos for married couples as it pertains to finance, like I want to explore this idea you just spoke about, like the lack of alignment in terms of finances being chaos. Like, I guess the question I will ask, or I'll put out there, which I think is a great question for us to start the show off and start talking about, is do finances have to be chaotic? You know, or does finance need to be chaotic in a marriage?
Not at all. I feel like it can be the complete opposite. Much with anything else, if you put plan and intention into things, you can kind of expect a result. Even when life throws things that you didn't plan into the mix, you have a plan, and that will hopefully come with a contingency plan. So it doesn't have to be chaos at all. It hasn't been chaos for us, and we've been married for 8 years now.
We just recently celebrated our 8-year marriage anniversary, so hashtag more love.
Yes. But yeah, I don't feel like it has to be chaos at all. Like Samuel said, we've heard so many stories and seen things, and the amount of times where the thing that's going to bring resolve in this situation is the things we're going to mention tonight. And they're very simple, very easy to do, especially when you kind of, as individuals, let go of any pride and just say, okay, how does God want this to be done? So yeah, I feel like just how unified marriages visually is how finances should be as well. For me, it just seems a bit weird to have two people who are, according to the Bible, one, but then other things are two. They're split. For me, that doesn't make sense, because that's not a manifestation of who you are or who you're trying to be as a married couple. So,
alright, so obviously I know the three things, the three musts we're gonna share in a moment. So, I want to jump into them, but I do actually want to explore this more, this whole chaos thing, because you mentioned it initially. So it's like, how do you feel couples, married couples specifically, end up in a place where there is chaos in their finances? Like, how does that happen? Like, how?
I believe there's a scripture that says that strife is basically caused by pride. Like, there's nothing that
there's not basically, contention does not come unless there's pride.
Pride, exactly.
That's a paraphrase.
Yeah. So, for me, even just the thought of chaos in finances, there's so many scenarios which I think just boil down to pride. So, for example, there might be chaos in that a woman's earning more than a man in a marriage, and that could be an issue. Again, the core of that is pride. There might be, I want to keep my income as my income, and you keep yours as your income. So again, for me, that boils down to pride, as in, that's mine, that's yours. Haven't read that in the Bible. And another example, like a woman wants to have her nose in her husband's finances, but does not want his nose in her finances. All of that for me just boils down to pride, and I feel like that's the core issue when it comes to financial chaos. I think it's pride. If everyone sets aside their pride, I believe that there won't be a fall, according to the Bible. So there doesn't have to be a fall when it comes to your finances.
So, in light of what you've shared, first and foremost, just for those of you who are watching, Proverbs chapter 13 verse 10 is the verse that Robbie was alluding to a moment ago, which I vaguely paraphrased. It says, only by pride cometh contention. Okay, and I believe that's the first part of the verse. I believe there's a second part as well, which talks about ignominy, I believe. And the only reason I remember that is because I remember the first time I ever read that, I was like, that word seemed weird. But yeah, maybe I'll pull up the verse at some point and then basically share that with you. But that was Proverbs chapter 13 verse 10 for those of you who wanted the verse, those of you who are scholars. Okay, so maybe it's not this verse. It says, only by pride cometh contention, but with the well advised is wisdom. So again, maybe that's not the verse I was thinking about, but Proverbs 13:10, only by pride cometh contention, but with the well advised there is wisdom.
Which is very pertinent for what we're talking about today.
I think it is definitely pertinent in terms of what we're talking about today. I think some of the things you've raised I find to be quite powerful in terms of chaos creeping into a relationship, and that's what's really what's happening. It's not chaos in the finances, because okay, chaos may come in through the finances, but that chaos wants to go into the relationship. And I think that's something people don't realize. Like, for example, the Bible says, I believe it's John chapter 10 verse 10, it says, the thief comes not but to steal, kill and destroy. And then, the Lord Jesus goes on to say, but I have come that they might have life, and they might have life more abundantly. Now, the reason that's important is because it's like chaos in people's finances doesn't come just to be chaos in their finances. Like, it's like anything. Like, chaos doesn't want to grow into just a little box in someone's finance. Chaos wants to grow like a virus. It wants to go into the finances. It wants to go into the bedroom. It wants to go into the lingo, how you talk to each other. It wants to go into your relationships with other people, and then it wants to tear everything up, because that's what chaos does. Chaos is chaos.
Because its father is the devil. So
there you go. So for me, it's like that whole John chapter 10 verse 10, the thief comes not but to steal, kill and destroy, is effectively the heart behind when chaos comes into finances, where it's planning to go. The issue is, I think, again, similar to something Jesus says, he says it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. I think there are not enough people, I find anyway, from my experience, again, this is not generalizing, but this is generalizing in terms of my engagement and my experiences. But I find that too many people, do not appreciate that drama in one department is potentially a footstep for drama in multiple departments.
100%.
And I think this is something
100%.
people need to have kind of more of awareness and acknowledgement of, so that they can basically be safer in their relationships. They can play a better game in their relationship. So we spoke about chaos, being in finances, and you've kind of shared about, people having things in common but not having things in common, which is, again, like you alluded to, it's a weird dichotomy. I don't get it myself either. I think for me, it's like, when I think about chaos in people's finances, I feel as though the main cause of chaos in people's finances is the simple fact that when you come into a marriage, when you go into a relationship, even just regardless of a marriage, the best way to go into a relationship is as a whole person, as a full solid entity. So then what happens is the two shall become one. Okay, and you can't be two if each of yous aren't whole, if that makes sense. Like, if someone's 100% and someone's like 40%, that's not two. That's 140%.
Yeah.
So we're still 60% reduced. It's even less than it's not exactly that, but it's like we're still 60% away from being who we're supposed to be. So for me, it's like, that's where the problem comes in. The problem comes in where a man hasn't got learned to be a whole man before he goes into that marriage or that relationship. And in many cases, some cases also, I think we're finding this more and more in this generation, but a woman also hasn't become a complete woman before she's going into a marital relationship. And I think when that happens, when people aren't complete in and of themselves, they're still lacking and missing certain attributes, entities, whatever it may be, whatever you call it, in and of themselves. I think that's what makes it a challenge for them to go into a marriage and, I don't want to use this word because I don't think the word perform is the best word, but fulfill the purpose of the office of marriage. When they're ill-equipped, I think that's the best way to say it, when they're ill-equipped. And for me, that is what it is. It's an ill-equipping.
Yeah. It's interesting because we've shared it before on our finances live stream, but finances was one area where I was very much reluctant to open up about, to speak about. It just felt very uncomfortable for me because of the bad experiences I had in my single life, and I just felt like, come on, let's just not talk about it and we'll be cool. Like, let's just live happily ever after. Like, why are we talking about finances? Come on. And for me, I think whenever myself and Samuel would have discussions about finances, it kind of would get heated at times, isn't it? Do you remember?
Early stages.
It'd get heated.
Because you didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. But then
I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, but then it got to a point, I don't know if you remember, it got to a point where I had now been like, wow, yes, I love this talk about finances. I love the plans we have. Yeah, budgeting. And then I don't want to talk about it. And then Samuel didn't seem like he wanted to talk about it.
I was busy. I was cracking on about stuff.
And that would frustrate me because I'm like, come on, I'm now finally on the same page as you. Come on, I want to talk about finances. I want to talk about what's our plan for the money. Come on. And yeah, so you can see from that how finances is a key element in marriage, and you need to have peace about it on both sides. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that is an important factor. I think one of the things to say is finance is one of several key elements in a relationship where the more, and I'm going to use these words very specifically, but the more unity that you have in each of the key areas of a marriage, the easier it is for you to be effective, successful, prosperous, if I use that word, in the marriage.
100%.
Because of the fact that you're dealing with majors and you're working on those majors appropriately. Yeah. Rather than focusing on minors, which is what so many couples do. She's gorgeous, she's attractive, I want to marry her. Like, that's a minor, bro. And the reason it's a minor is because it's going to be changing for the rest of her life, your life, etc.
It is fleeting.
That's what they say. So
not there, the Bible says that.
Well, that's what
Proverbs 31.
That's what it says. But the thing that's interesting is, like, there are certain things that aren't going to change the way someone's appearance changes. You know, so those are the things to mainly focus on. And first and foremost, those are like the word of God. Like, if I'm going to be like really clear and specific to start with.
Yeah.
The word of God is the first point of call where you can say, well, look, this is something that's not going to change. So because this is not going to change, let me start founding my changeable relationship on something that's not going to change. Especially and I'll say this to you guys, especially if you want to stay married, especially if you want to have a relationship that the status, if we use Facebook language, the status isn't going to change. If you're using social media language and you don't want the status of your relationship to change, I'm married, I want to stay married, then you should found that marriage on something else that's not going to change. It's like a mentor, for example. I know you spoke, Robbie, in some of the other live streams. I don't think it was only the finance one. I think it was one of the family ones. Maybe the last one we did, when we talked about family and loss. And you were speaking about relationships and how certain relationships work a certain way. And it's funny because one of the things you have to remember is, in order for you to go out there and get a mentor, for example, I'm talking about here the word of God, you want to make sure that that mentor has achieved or is achieving or is successful in the area you're asking them to mentor you in. So if you want a relationship that doesn't end, you were talking about in that live stream, well, you're probably going to get your best kind of teaching or your best experience or your best coaching from someone who's got a relationship that hasn't ended. And I'd say the same thing. If you want to have a relationship that is everlasting, then to the best of your degree, found it on something that's everlasting rather than something that is fleeting. So
and that reminds me of where the Bible talks about building upon the solid rock. You don't build on sand like the foolish man did, because that's something that's not stable. It's not something that lasts. And the things that you spoke about as the key elements to marriage, what I find is that a lot of married couples are just not aware of them. For myself, I wasn't aware of it until we discussed it, and I know this is live, but I'm thinking we should coach people on this, because I'm sure people are literally not aware of it, and they're just we're going to buy a house, we're going to have children, we're going to live together forever, and we'll have Christ at the centre. And it's just
the thing that's funny about that is, it takes something to buy a house, and most people might just say, yeah, it takes money, but it's not money. It takes something to buy a house. Then secondarily, to have children, it takes something to have children. And again, some people might say, oh, that's just having sex. No, it's not just that simple. And then equally, it takes something to live happily ever after. It's like you were saying earlier, oh, you didn't want to talk about money, but you're just thinking, okay, let's just live happily ever after. It's like, if you say that to anyone who's thinking logically, with common sense, that doesn't make any sense. How do you live happily ever after not discussing something? You can't live happily ever after in ignorance. You just think, guys, tell us in the comments if we're right or wrong. What do you think? Do you think someone can live happily ever after being ignorant of something that's important? Okay, so feel free to let us know in the comments yourself as well. But I think I'm with you, so I'm happy to help people if they need that help, in terms of focusing on those 3 core areas, and other stuff as well, that we've learned over the years. That's why we do this, so that even if we don't have the time to coach people in that sense, they can take the value from this and coach themselves and move forward and improve themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
So with that being said, let's jump into number 1. Okay, and the first one, I'll let you share it with us. What's the first one?
The first one is to have financial goals, and when we say this, we mean joint financial goals. So things that you have written down and made very plain with each other as to where you desire for your finances to go, and that's in the literal sense, where you want them to go. So every time they come in, where you want them to go, but also where you want them to go in the future sense. Goals are very important, full stop anyway. That's something that we did, not a financial goal, but what's the word?
We did a goals workshop.
Goals workshop, yeah, holistic, that's what I was looking for, thank you. We done a holistic goals workshop, and that was very pertinent in terms of us getting together and then getting married, because it showed us how our lives had been aligned by the Lord, but even then, after getting married, we've done goals workshops again just to realign ourselves, make sure we're doing things in accordance to where we have desired to go. But just having a goal it gives you a destination, it gives you a purpose, it gives your finances a purpose, a destination. So yeah, a goal. Just like playing football, you desire to put the ball in the net, which is going to be the goal. Imagine playing football with no nets, no goals. Imagine that. You'd just be kicking the ball around.
I was going to say it wouldn't be football.
No.
You can't.
Yeah.
Football without a goal is not football.
It could be classed as football still because there's a foot on the ball, isn't it?
No.
You wouldn't score any goals.
It's not football then. It's funny because football's one of those sports, obviously, especially because we're in the UK, where we see so much of it, we hear so much of it. You can come out of your house, walk for less than 10 minutes, you'll be near a park and you'll see someone kicking a ball. So in your head, oh, they're playing football. No, they're kicking a ball. Like, football is a game. And because it's a game, it has rules, like the offside rule, which many people don't even know how that works. But it has
an aim.
Constructs. It's like marriage. Do you get what I'm saying? You can see too, like, I hear this all the time from people. Oh, we've been together for 40 years. We might as well get married because, there's no difference. We already live together. We've already been living together for 40 years. Like, there's no difference. Like, there is a difference. Do you get what I'm saying? There's a massive difference. Like, marriage is not
a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a piece of paper. It's not just living with somebody. Like, it's not what it looks like. So this comes back to the whole football thing. Football's not kicking a ball. Do you get what I mean? There's people kicking it who aren't married.
Yeah, it's not a kit.
That's not marriage.
It's not wearing the kit. It's not having the football.
Yeah, it's not being sponsored. Like, there's a lot of you can go into. Professional football teams are sponsored. If you're in a real marriage, you will be sponsored. Do you understand that? Like, God is behind, he backs marriage because that's his institution. So as a direct byproduct, you get sponsorship. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, that's on a high level. We could even go deeper into it. Yeah. But it's just those kind of things. Like, kicking a ball is not football. But the same way, kicking it is not being married.
Yeah. And yeah, it's important to make sure you have a goal, because it gives everything a purpose. It gives purpose. And I think that's the ultimate thing, is that purpose is present, because without purpose, it's like, what do you do? The Bible says that without a vision, the people perish. And a vision is literally like a goal. It's like you have somewhere you're going. It's foresight to see. And having vision for your finances, I think, is a key thing.
So this is the joint financial goals, the vision for your finances effectively. So I guess, like, the question I will ask, so we can get this, like, clearer for the people that are watching this, like, what does a financial vision or joint financial goals, which is the term you use, what does that look like? Like, what could that look like from a very basic level? And then I could potentially add on what that could look like on a more comprehensive level.
Okay. Well, on a very basic level, it has to be something that's written down. The Bible says that we should write the vision down, make it plain. And there's like a difference that happens when you write something down. It's like you're etching it into history, because it's like when you say something, it goes into the atmosphere and things do start to move. But when you write it down, no one could ever say that's not written. Does that make sense? Where someone could say, you never said that. So it has to be written down. It has to be something that's done together, in my opinion, because for those who are married, you're now one according to the Bible. So there should be one goal, one aim. Even if that one aim, one goal has many branches, there should still be one aim, one goal that both parties are aware of. And this, when I say for married couples, this is not something I say should only happen once you're married. I think it's very important to do this prior to marriage, because you need to know that you're aiming for the same thing, like, before you get into getting married.
So did you do that?
I didn't, and that's why I advise it. And the thing is, imagine if this is a very extreme example, but imagine if both Christians, both want to make lots of money, but one person wants to invest it into a pimp business just because they're like, no, you can make lots of money from pimps.
What's a pimp business? You mean like a strip club?
I don't know. I just imagine pimps. I
What's
don't
a
know.
pimp
I don't know
business?
much. I don't know much about that life.
Guys,
Maybe funding a pimp. I don't know. Investing in a pimp because you make lots of money. And imagine if that was never spoken of before you got married, and that's something. Imagine the wife is very much against, but the husband's like, no, you can make money from that. Once you're married, that's a battle that you need to now fight.
That's the chaos we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
It's very wise to do these things and have discussions around these things before you get married. I think it's very, very key. Don't avoid it. I'm grateful to God that He showed me mercy while I was in my ignorance about my finances, because Samuel still married me.
You know what? It's fun. It's so funny. It's so funny, guys. I don't think you know how funny it is, yeah, that Robbie's talking about this. Because as she's saying all this, I'm sitting here thinking like, it's not hypocrite, but I'm close. I'm close to saying something like that. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, the actual question that was boiling up in me is, okay, so what do the brothers do out there that are courting these ladies, and these ladies are resistant to talk about finances? And these brothers know that this conversation has to happen.
Yeah.
What do these brothers do?
You have to be
do they choose someone else? Do they say, look, you can't be God's choice for me? Because if you are God's choice for me, you would speak about this topic that we need to talk about.
You have to be led of the Spirit, because in my head while someone was talking, I heard the words, look off.
Imagine that, guys.
Imagine that, guys.
So Robbie's just judged herself. This is why the prophet Nathan coming to David in the Bible and telling him that story about a man who had a dear sheep, his only lamb.
Oh, Lord.
Guys, it's that real, okay? Sometimes it gets that real. By Robbie's own judgment just now, maybe Robbie would have been locked off.
But you have to be led, because there's things that trump finances, which is purpose, which is obedience.
That's true.
Now, if God has said this is your wife, you need to marry her on the 9th of June 2012, you need to marry her on the 9th of June 2012. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can only just say that now, because that's the grace you're talking about.
That's the grace, the mercy. So yeah, you have to be led, but ultimately there should be a high precedence given to the things that are important. Like we both, do you want to share the 3 things that we were told?
Nah, because that's not this show. So guys,
I knew you was gonna say that.
Well, that's Samuel, innit? You might get that on another show.
Let me just ask.
You might get that on another show. If you want the 3 key areas that we spoke about, then guys, let us know and we'll probably do another show for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got a lot to cover in this show.
You should actually put in the comments what you think they are, because we have mentioned them several times, even in this show.
We mention them all the time because they're basically hallmarks of our relationship. Yeah. But they're hallmarks of any relationship, and the faster you get to a place where you understand what they are and you can start to work on them, the better you'll be in your relationship, just as I've echoed earlier on.
So that's 3 key areas that you must have a discussion about when you're getting married, because there are 3 key areas that apparently cause the highest rates of divorce. Was that verbalized correctly?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard you articulate it like that. So yeah, cool. It was good. Well done. All right, so let's go back to this.
Okay, let's go.
Because I feel like you deviated. Sorry. That's fine. Don't be sorry. You're good. You're giving value out here. So the question was, and you started really well. You said, and maybe that's it. Maybe what you've said is already enough. Like the question was, what is the most basic way? What is the most basic, example of actually having joint financial goals? And you've said, well, it has to be written down. So is that it? Like, as long as they've written something down, I have financial joint goals with you.
It has to be written down. It has to be specific, and it has to be, what's the word I just thought about? It has to be, come on, Sammy, help me now.
Attainable?
No, it's not SMART goals. It has to be written down. I can't remember the last word I was going to say.
That's fine.
But yeah, I feel like it has to be written down. Has to. Oh, that's it. Discussed. That was the word I was thinking of. It has to be discussed. So it's not something that you just write down and you leave it. Yeah, it has to be discussed and what's the word?
Agreed upon.
Negotiable. So remember, obviously, it's two people becoming one. So you can't just be like, "Oh, this is my goal." You know.
I don't know if you ever did that to me. I don't know if you would know either. I don't know what that was. What was that? You opening Fanta or something? We haven't been drinking. We ain't been doing fizzy drinks, so I don't know what.
Well, you had a Fanta last week, but anyway, we won't go into that. So, you right there?
I'm good. I'm good.
You right?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I'm blessed.
Yeah.
I'm blessed.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like those are the key basics, but you can now expand and
on something more comprehensive.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, guys, if you are looking at developing, joint financial goals as a couple or as a couple that are courting, for the married couples out there, what I would say to you guys is start from where you're at and make sure you try to work towards where you want to finish. So when I say that, what I mean is, there's this very common phrase out there. It's start with the end in mind. I think there's so many times people do not actually think about where are we trying to get to. Okay, so I'll make this really easy for you. Like, again, this is comprehensive, but I'm making it simple because I hope nobody wants the rocket science. Like, obviously, studying 4 degrees, we could do the rocket science.
No, we're good.
But we don't need the rocket science. So let me put it like this. Basically, the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So if you're asking me, and we're talking about finances, we start from the children's children. So we start from our grandchildren. And then from your grandchildren, you work your way backwards to today. Wherever today is, 2018, 2012, 2020, wherever your today is. And the reason you do that is because that gives you a roadmap to start with, to start throwing goals out there. So the question is, okay, what do you want for your children's children? What's your goal for your children's children? Now, this is the great thing about this, about using God's concepts, is God forces you to think outside of your standard rationale. Like, most natural humans are only thinking about their own life. Oh, I want to retire, live in this kind of house, have this kind of income, etc. But if you're thinking about your children's children, you have to go outside of your logical zone of comfort. And you now have to push that ideology as far as to these people that you've never met, and then going even further to people that you may never even meet. So again, and I'm talking about your children and then your children's children. So I would say start with the end in mind, i.e. the children's children. You want to achieve that good man status from God, and obviously good wife, good woman status from God. So start from there. What do we want to leave for our children's children? And you might have to, theorize a few things. How many children's children do we think we're going to have, for example? So look, you want a multitude? Okay, you want 8 children? Then boy, you might end up with 8 times 8 grandchildren. That's 64 children, 64 grandchildren, apologies. So if you've got 64 grandchildren, the question is, what do you want to leave for those 64 grandchildren? Okay, is it just £1,000 each, which is £64,000? Or are you trying to go for $1 million each? You're trying to go for 100,000 each? You can try to go for 10,000 each? And again, guys, it's not a I'm just dreaming. I'm just throwing out the stars. No, like, think tangibly, like what could be done. And I want to say this to everybody watching this, no matter what your status is in relationships, because I know this is going to help you guys as well. I really want you to grab this, okay? I read this from John Maxwell years ago. He used to say, we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, and most people radically underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years or 10 years. Now, the reason I'm saying that to you is when you start thinking about your children's children, you might be saying to yourself, oh, there's only so much I can do, and massively underestimating what you can do. Now, in the next 30 years, 35 years, 24 years, it's amazing. Like, think of it like this. Over a span of 30 years, it wasn't even 30. I think Robbie and I was talking about this a couple of weeks, months ago. We were talking about how in a period of 15 years, okay, in the last 15 years, we went from not being married, being single people to married people. We went from being single people to parents. We went from being single people to parents of 4 children. We went from people with no degrees to, in my case, studying 4 degrees. In Robbie's case, studying 2 degrees. Like, when you start thinking about that, you start realizing, wow, like, look at how much is achieved in a period of 15 years.
Yeah,
but the problem is most people don't think about 15 years as a time frame. They think about 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, because they're very common. So that's where I'd say you should start. Start with your children's children, work all the way back to today. Start asking yourself what you want to achieve for those children's children, and just set the goals. So that's what I'd say, set the goals. So by set the goals, what I mean is numerical goals. Again, Robbie mentioned be specific, set numerical goals. But also what I'd say is, don't think about finance and wealth just about cash and money. Okay, so what I mean by that is, you might want to leave your children's children something that is not cash. Well, that's not cash, but that is tangible. So for example, you might want to leave them gold coins, silver coins, bullion. You might want to leave them stocks, shares. Okay, and I'm not really one of those advocates for stocks and shares for inheritance, but again, at the end of the day, you might want to leave that for them. You know, today we have trusts, so you might want to leave them a trust where a trust has certain kind of value to it, which they can take on and move forward with. ISAs, you might want to leave them certain accounts. Okay, so that's what I'd say. Also, obviously, my thing's property. Everybody knows that. You might want to leave them certain property assets. Okay, so again, these might not be, oh, I'm leaving my great grandson a property for him to live in. It might be, I'm leaving him a cash flowing property, which generally at this time generates £1,000 a month. So that by the time he gets it, maybe it's generating £2,000 a month. And maybe he never has to work from day one. Okay, so it's all about thinking into the details. Okay, so that's the level of specificity. I'm gonna go with specificness. But that's the that's
specificness.
Well, if it ain't a word,
is it a word? What's the word? You know the word.
We can work with the dictionary. We can create a new word.
Specificness.
That's the level of specificity or specificness, whichever one works, which I think you can go into to be even more comprehensive. But give yourself that time frame where you're working as far as your children's children as a minimum, and then all the way back. So that's what I'd say. So that's the first key. The first key was make sure that you guys have joint financial goals. All right, so that's number one. Number two, I'm going to share number two. See your money as one, okay? And this is, I think, this is probably the one where we've seen the most people have drama.
100%.
Like we've seen this again and again and again, and I think the reason why we've noticed this so well is because we went into our marriage being completely against this, but secondarily we've seen people do this on all these different levels, like people. What I mean is, people in our generation, we've seen people just getting married doing this. We've seen people that have been married for decades doing this. We've seen it on multiple levels.
Oh, yeah.
Why is it? Like, why do people do that? Okay, guys, first and foremost, if you don't understand what we're talking about, let me elaborate.
Clarify, yeah.
All right? Let me elaborate. That's where we start, okay? See your money as one. What that means is, what she make, what he make is what we make.
Can you say it again, please?
What she make, what he make is what we make.
What he make, what she make is what we make. What she make, what he make is what we make.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, see your money as one. See your assets as one. See your resources as one. Okay? Like, we have seen so many couples just separate their money.
That's mine. That's yours. This is mine.
No, if we were doing
that
properly, it would be like, that's mine.
Never.
I won't finish that.
Yeah, don't finish it.
That's ours.
Even I still have to get used to this. Not in terms of finances, but in terms of possessions, items. Like, I will say, "Oh, Samuel, your desk." He's like, "Our desk," and I'm like, "Oh, baby, your car." Our car. So even me, I'm still trying to remember that. But in terms of finances, it's ours. I remember when we were getting married, I couldn't fathom having my account and Samuel's account and not knowing what's going on between the two. Like, that doesn't, to me, that don't make sense, because I'm meant to be one with this man. He's meant to be one with me. How can I not even know where his money's going? And this is how people get themselves in trouble. This is how nonsense like adultery and stuff can happen, because there's secrets.
Well,
that's essentially what it is. Let me
say this, like, it's not.
It's how it can happen.
Baby boy wants to say hi.
Daniel,
Yeah,
Daniel agrees.
I think baby boy agrees. But like, I guess what I would say is I don't necessarily see it as this is how things like adultery happen, but I do see how when you are supposed to be two who have become one and you're still in any way, shape or form acting like two, you create an opportunity for you to not be one. And that obviously just makes sense, guys. So for me, like, that's how I'd kind of echo the point that Robbie was making. Because personally, like, I just think if you're a man and you've got finances which nobody has to check you on, or you got finances which you do whatever you want to do with those things, like, what you got to bear in mind is obviously you can do whatever you want. Like, you're not being held accountable, and if you're not being held accountable, you can do things that people who are not being held accountable do. So a married man is different to an unmarried man. An unmarried man can wake up at 5 a.m. and be like, okay, I'm going X place to do Y thing. And a married man shouldn't just conduct himself like that because he's engaged in a marriage. So for me, I feel as though, you know, you shouldn't have your finances separated. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think, let me be more clear, because I think this is very important. I don't think it's a God idea, okay? I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe even in church communities, in, you know, pastors maybe, that are teaching you should have your finances separate. And that's cool, because maybe they think it's a good idea. But what I want to share is it's not a God idea. There's nowhere in the scripture which alludes to that practice being productive. And I just want to share with you guys that for those of you who are watching this, if that's something you've got yourself into as a married couple, rectify it, change it. Like, you know, one of the key ways, Robbie and I speak about this all the time, one of the key ways to help you get your money together is to have joint accounts. You know, joint accounts, radically helps you to make sure that you can all see what's going on. And, you know, we've got businesses, and even our business accounts are actually joint accounts, because that helps on the business level for us to both see where things are going, how things are going, and why things are going as well.
He's like, Daddy, who are you talking to?
I'm talking to the live show. Do you want to say hello?
I want to sleep then.
I guess that's a no. Okay, cool. So, like we said, basically, we think key number 2, the second must do for married couples, is see your money as one. Make sure that the two of you are engaging with those resources as one entity. And look, I'll be honest with you guys, if you see your money as one, you'll be more effective with that money, because they say two are better than one. So when you have two minds focused on one resource, it makes it even easier for you guys to take full advantage of the resources you have, and not only the resources you have, but the resources you're working towards generating and creating as well.
Hold on, Samuel, but what if I want to surprise you one time? What am I going to do then if I want to spend money from my account to surprise you? How am I going to do that if you can see everything I'm buying?
That's a fantastic question. So, you know, there's so many answers I have for this. The reason why is because I've studied this, okay, in the first couple of years when we actually got married. This was a question I actually had, so I really like that question. But basically, here's some of the keys for you guys to actually use, all right? The first and foremost thing is this. You can have single accounts, okay? This is not don't have single accounts. You can have single accounts, but make sure that your single accounts are part, and it's funny, we're going to come on to this in actually the third must do, but make sure that your single accounts are part of your financial goals. So for example, in our relationship, this is just to give you something tangible. Robbie has her own account. She has more than one of her own accounts, but she has her own account. I have my own account, but our own accounts are not necessarily the accounts where our revenue comes into, and they're not the primary accounts where we do the majority of our banking activity through or from. And the reason why that is so our own accounts can be utilized for whatever things we want to do on our own. So for example, I don't get my nails done. I'm just saying, guys, yeah, I don't get my nails done. Let me go further. I don't get my eyebrows done. I'm just saying, guys, okay? But I do go to the barbers quite regularly. Now, as a direct byproduct, in my account, I have funds which allows me to go get my hair cut any single time I want without having to necessarily check in or say, oh, look, I'm going to the joint account or any of the joint accounts in order to utilize resources for the purpose of cutting my hair. And the same with Robbie. Like, Robbie has resources in her solo account where she can enable herself to go and do things. So the answer to your question is, if you want to spend money on your hubby All you got to do is have a financial structure that works for the two of you. So with that in mind, I'm going to go on to the third must do for couples in their finances, and that is have a financial plan. Okay, and it's that simple. Have a financial plan. And this is what I was saying, that some of the things I shared in the second must do truly relate to the third must do. Have a financial plan. Now, by a financial plan, this, I've also put the word map as well. Have a financial map. Okay, and the reason I'm saying this is because, look, if you're doing what we said in the first must do, if you're saying, well, look, my long-term financial goal, our long-term financial goals are to leave X, Y, and Z for our children's children, and then as a byproduct of that, you know, A, B, and C for our children, then you might need a roadmap. You probably will need a roadmap. In order to be successful, you need a financial game plan or a financial roadmap in order to achieve that level of success, or even in order to try and achieve that level of success. Now, again, this doesn't have to be something complicated and convoluted like an in-depth 28-page business plan. This can be something very, very simple. But the point is, take the goal and turn the goal into a plan, and make sure that the two of you have become one as you go on that plan. And that's the way that we can put each of these three must-dos together in a very simplistic fashion. You take the goal, you basically work on it together as one, and then when you have that joint set of goals together, you then create a plan. And that plan is just simply, like we said, the roadmap. Now, some of the things I wanted to add on to that, you know, Robbie shared this with me earlier on, and I thought, you know what, it's a good point to share, because some of you might have heard of this word and not known if it's a word that is relevant, and some of you might think, you know what, I definitely don't want to do this, etc., etc. But let's add this in. Part of your financial plan, part of your financial roadmap might be to have a budget, for example. So the budget helps you arrange, organize, and manage your finances in the here and now. And that might be part of your financial plan. For some people, they don't need that. They don't want that, okay? But for many people, a budget will be massive help to you, okay? So that's something I want to encourage you guys with as well. And I just want to say to you, set up a financial plan. If you need to, let that basically include a budget, so that that can help you basically provide a roadmap all the way to your financial goals. Now, we're going to kind of ask a question right now. And that question is, if you're getting value from the three must-haves that we've shared so far, the must-dos for couples as it pertains to finance, just write the word value in the comment section, and I'm going to do something which we didn't discuss doing, but I'm going to turn these three finance must-dos for couples into 5. Okay, so I'm going to add 2 more just to give you guys even more value, and so you guys can be even more successful as you move forward in your relationship as a couple, as it pertains to your finances. All right, so let's go into number 4. Now, number 4 that I'm going to share with you, and I think is massively important. I think so many people forget this. Study your focus. Okay, study your focus. Now, the Bible says you should study. 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16. It says, study to show yourself approved, so you can be basically a worthy workman. Okay, so I want to use that concept and tell you, in your finances with your marital partner, you need to study your focus. Now, what do I mean by study your focus? I'm going to make this real simple. If you've set financial goals, okay, and then you've created that financial roadmap, and you and your spouse are working on that together, there's going to be certain things you're going to have in there. So, for example, if you say, well, we want to leave our children, you know, bullion. Okay, now bullion, for those of you who don't know, is effectively just gold bars. Okay, so they don't have to be the big gold bars. They could be small gold bars. They could be gold coins, etc. Gold, silver coins. It's just minted material. So let's say, for example, you want to actually leave your great-grandchildren or your grandchildren, let's say your grandchildren for now, you want to leave each of your grandchildren a gold coin, for example. Now, you would be very, very wise to start studying bullion, to start studying what bullion is worth what. Why is an Australian coin worth a little bit more than a Canadian coin? Or why is, you know, Somalian coin worth a little bit less than a British coin. You would want to go and study those things, and not only study those things, you'd also want to find out other things. So for example, some people have never done any study on the word money. Like, they've never even studied what money is. Like, some people viewing this will never have heard of the word fiat currency. Okay, and guys, I'd encourage you, like, go watch a YouTube video on what is fiat currency, so you can at least have some basic understanding of how certain things work, which you're actually working with every single day, you're playing with every single day. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because if you start to study your focus, you actually get better, like 10 times better at being able to achieve and deploy your focus. Okay, and this is the key. It's not study your focus so you can be someone who's a bookworm who can say, look, I've read 15 books on gold. I've read 15 books on stocks. I've read 15 books on property. No, guys, this isn't about head knowledge. This is about achievement. And just simply put, if you want to actually achieve the goals, the financial joint goals that you have with your spouse, then it would help you. It will do you such a great service if you actually study the areas you're focusing on. So if you are the kind of person who's thinking about, precious metals is just gold, silver, all of those kind of things, platinum, etc. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, then start to study it. Okay, stocks, same thing. If you're interested in stocks, start to study stocks. If you're interested in shares, start to study shares. If you're interested in whatever it is, as it pertains to your financial goals, after you've set those joint goals, after you've then created some kind of a roadmap, start to actually study the key variables that you've placed inside. Start to study property or whatever else are those variables for you. So, yeah, anything you want to add in light of that, Queen? And then I'll jump on to number 5.
Not really, no.
Alright, cool. So, last one, number 5. Okay? And for me, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. For me, this became, I guess, the most powerful out of all of the ones I've shared here. Because I saw how this particular must do for me really helped me, like, stay on point, stay on focus, stay on target. And when things get hard, guys, you're going to need this number 5. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'll give you an example, a real life example from our journey. We spent a number of years focusing predominantly on becoming debt free. Okay. When we first got married, we had 4 debts. Okay. Only 4 debts. Those 4 debts were 2 student loans and 2 student overdrafts. Robbie had a student overdraft and a student loan. I had a student loan and a student overdraft. And I remember, like, we worked our way through the 2 student overdrafts, which was a journey, but it was a great journey. And then we worked our way through the student loans. And it's funny because when we were working to pay off my student loan, which was the first student loan we really focused on, the thing I remember is, like, it was a journey, okay? It was a real journey. Like, it wasn't oh yeah, in 2 weeks we'll pay this off. Like, I think we were making voluntary contributions of £500 a month. We had the full amount of the debt at the time was like £11,000. And we obviously had my salary contributing, like, the minimum that you get taken out automatically.
And I was studying at the time and we didn't want to go into debt for that. So
yes, that's another powerful thing. So Robbie was also studying at the time. She was doing her PGCE. She was qualifying to become a teacher. And we were paying her course fees, which were £9,000 for the year.
No. No.
It was £9,000 for the year, I think.
I thought it was 3,000.
I think we paid £900 for about 10 months or something like that.
Really?
I think it was on my board.
No, it was free. Oh, I thought it was...
Maybe it was free. Alright,
I
cool.
it was 3 payments of 900 or something like that, no? Or 4 payments. I don't know.
There was another expense. There was another expense. We'll come back to you guys and let you know exactly what the figures were. But there was another expense which we were paying for Robbie to basically go to school and study at uni her 2nd degree. Now, the thing that was interesting about all of that is each and every month on one primary income, we were paying for Robbie's university, we was paying for all our living expenses, we was paying for our accommodation.
Yeah, you're right.
everything.
It was £9,000.
I'm sure it was £9,000.
£900 a month. I remember. Yeah.
I'm sure it was £9,000.
No.
So we were paying all of that, and we were contributing £500 a month, voluntary payments on top of the payments that were being taken each month from my salary in order for us to pay off the first student loan. And guys, the fifth must do. Guys, you've got to do this. Because if you don't do this, I'm going to be really honest with you. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4 aren't even going to work. Number 5 is encourage your spouse, especially when things get hard. Like, encourage your spouse throughout the journey, but especially when things get hard. Because you may have a month or two where you're not even thinking about finances. You're thinking about the stress of something, whether it's the stress of your job. If you got children at that stage, you might be thinking about things your children are in need of, or things your children are asking you for, or things your children are looking for. Like, and there's so many things, even like cars. Like, I remember when we first got married, we had 2 cars. We had a car each. We came into our marriage with a car each. And after a while, we were like, we don't need 2 cars. We go everywhere together. Let's get rid of one of the cars. And we got rid of one of the cars. And it wasn't even one of those things where we sold the car and made money. We actually scrapped the car. We scrapped the car. I think they did pay us for that car. They must have given us like £60. Like, it was just something silly. Like, it was less than £200. It was just something silly. It was just like, we just need this car gone. Because we just don't want insurance payments on 2 cars. We just don't want petrol payments on 2 cars. We don't want the car sitting outside, tax, MOT. All of these expenses for a car we're not even using because we go everywhere together. So we ended up driving 1 car, and then the funniest thing is we had a child, and we were like, should we get another car? No, we don't need it. What do we need another car for? And we ended up having 1 car until recently. Yeah. Until quite recently. And we've just celebrated 8 years of marriage. So we've gone basically 7 years straight. Let's call it 6. We can confidently say 6, but we've gone a confident 6 years with 1 car because we realized we don't need 2 cars. And we've done that for the most part, for the most part with 4 children. So, well, let me not say that. We've done that for the most part with children because our oldest is 6.
Yeah, it was when we had baby number 4, we had to get 2 cars.
It was baby number 4, which encouraged us to get a second car. And guys, let me help you understand this. We didn't end up buying 2 cars because we had baby number 4. What actually happened is we had a car, but because we had baby number 4, we had to have a 7-seater. Yeah. So we ended up getting a 7-seater. Okay, so if you think about it, really, we might have just got rid of our car and just had a 7-seater and still had 1 car. Yeah. So again, not saying you should do the same, but I'm just saying, guys, if you've got financial goals, it helps you to kind of weather the storm and get through things how you want to get through them. But the key point, number 5, the must do is encourage your spouse throughout everything, especially when things get hard. With the finances, guys, I'm telling you, if you're not encouraging your spouse is not going to sit down with you and set financial goals with you. If you're not encouraging your spouse, it's going to be hard for your spouse to see the 2 of yous looking at your finances as one. Yeah. If you're not encouraging your spouse, how are you going to get that real focused, genuine time for the 2 of you to create a roadmap for your finances? Okay. And also, if you're not encouraging your spouse, how is your spouse going to be studying? How are you going to be studying the things you're focused on? It's not going to happen because you're going to be trying to read a book on gold. Your wife's going to be saying that, why are you reading that book? Like, I've got to cook. Can you come and look after the children? Rather than, oh, honey, how do you feel about reading a book to the children? You know, and that's just a type of encouragement. Like, it's the same thing. Come and take care of the children whilst I go and do something, but it's worded differently because there's encouragement embedded in it. So guys, I want to encourage you, encourage your spouse throughout that journey. If you're not married yet and you're working towards marriage, each of the things we spoke about, start thinking about how you can start implementing them in your own way as a single person so you can be whole. Like, are you as a single person someone who has your own financial goals? Do you actually have a financial roadmap? Are you actually one with your plan? Okay, before you become one with a person, are you one with your plan? If your plan is to serve God with your finance and your resource, are you actually one with God in that regard? And then all of the other things as well. Are you keeping encouraged? Are you encouraging yourself? Are you finding ways to encourage yourself? And equally, are you studious in the areas that you're actually focused in? So they're the 5 that we want to share with you guys. Like, anything else you want to share, Queen?
Yeah, just in regard to encouraging your spouse, One of the key major things as well is to have faith. I know like that's a big thing with us having faith, but in terms of the finances, especially for men, it can be quite a what's the word? Like a huge responsibility in terms of finances, and that can weigh as a burden on the man of the house. So like ladies, be women of faith. Like one thing that I believe God showed me throughout my single life was how faithful he is. And I think when we first ever met, or properly, our first conversation was about the faithfulness of God and how God had been showing us as individuals how faithful he is. And that's something that you as ladies have to remember, as wives have to remember, as God's faithfulness, so that even when it's hard to see his faithfulness because of the natural, that you can encourage your husband or your husband to be about God's faithfulness and how he's done it before, he can do it again, he's faithful, and encourage them in that way as well. So yeah.
I think that's powerful. Like one of the things I'll say in line with that, or in the same vein as that, is get that in your DNA. Like that's, you know, that's how I see it. Like I'm gonna share something else, but I would say in light of what Robbie's just shared, you know, women and men, like, have a good understanding of God's faithfulness. But what I would say is, rather than just have a good understanding, like, don't make this thing head knowledge. Don't make God's faithfulness head knowledge. Like, make it part of your DNA. Embed that, hard code that in who you are as a person and a character. And the reason I'm saying that is, when you think about in the Bible talks about David, and he was going to face Goliath, which was, again, probably the biggest enemy he had ever faced up until that point. He said, I've destroyed the bear with God. Yeah. I've destroyed the lion with God. Yeah. So you uncircumcised Philistine, I know you've had your day. Like, your time's up. I'm going to destroy you. So guys, the reason why David was confident is because he had the faithfulness of God hard coded into him through his testimony and through his experiences and examples. And I would say the same thing to you. Like, you should be the kind of person, like, in the personal development world, all these people for the last 2 decades have been talking about gratitude journals. But guys, like, this is God's faithfulness. Like, this is what the Bible teaches and has been teaching for years. Like, I would encourage you to just be the kind of person who has hard coded within yourself. Like, you know what? God has been faithful to me. I remember when God did A for me. I remember when God did B for me. I remember when God did C for me. Like, I remember that. And guys, just regurgitate that stuff. Like, just bring it back up. And look, if you're in a relationship, do that with your spouse. Like, say to, like, wake up some mornings and just say to your spouse, oh, do you remember when God did this for us? Like, yeah, man, God has been faithful. And allow yourselves to kind of hard code that, embed that into your DNA. Because the more that's in your DNA, the more you guys will be able to survive and thrive when you go through certain things. Now, as Robbie was sharing about the faithfulness of God, it was making me think something to maybe share with the husbands or the men of you out there. Like, guys, what I would encourage you guys to make sure you do is see the value of your wife, okay? See the value of your wife. So many men, from my observation, have not seen the value in their wife, okay? And again, if you go back to the beginning of the show that we were talking about today, you know, these men who are like, young and marry her because she looks beautiful. Like, the value is not in the beauty, okay? The beauty is in the value. So when you start understanding how valuable your wife is, you will start seeing beautiful things about your wife you never saw before, okay? And the reason you hadn't seen them before is because you hadn't acknowledged that value. Now, what do I mean when I say that? The reason I'm saying this is because throughout our marriage, I've seen so many times where Robbie has had faith for things where I've been like, I know we're supposed to do this thing, but I just don't have the heart to actually run towards this thing. For whatever reason, it might be, I remember I was doing my master's in teaching, you know, coming to the end of that master's in teaching, there was so many times I got discouraged. I just felt like I was under a burden, and it's like, I just weren't feeling it. But Robbie would always bring, again, you know, she just shared about it now, but she'd always bring that faithfulness of God, like, as a message, like, no, Samuel, like, God's gonna be faithful to you. God shared with you, you should be doing this. Like, keep pushing because you're gonna succeed through it. And the funniest thing is, when you start to see that the value in your spouse is something more than money or resources, but it's, oh, this person actually brings encouragement, or this person actually brings accountability, or this person actually brings support or something else. That's when you can actually start to tap in to the real resource that God has called your spouse to be for you. So I want to encourage you, as men out there, have the eyes that God has for you and start to see the true value that your spouse actually brings to the table, because that is going to radically help you guys in your relationship to just move forward leaps and bounds. All right, cool. So with that being said, Queen, anything else you want to share? I'm going to have a quick dip into the comments. And guys, again, look, if you're getting value from today's show, just write the word value in the chat. Let us know that you're getting value. I've seen one of the comments basically saying that they definitely want us to share the 3 key areas. So we'll do a show on that in the future, 100%.
Sorry, I woke him up trying to lay him down.
That's cool. Anything you want to share, Queen?
No.
So we've got some great comments here. Nana says purpose needs to be present. Thank you for that, Nana. We appreciate you. You see it here. We want the 3 key areas, please. Truth bombs being dropped. Thank you, Z Diligence, for that comment as well. And we've got Israel, who's written here value. So appreciate you guys. Well, guys, look, that basically brings us to the end of the show. We do pray that you've got value throughout today's show, and we more than even pray that you've got value throughout this show. We also pray that you're going to use the key resources, the key ideas that we've shared with you in order to move forward in your own relationship and potentially in the relationship to come. So, guys, without further ado, simply I can win. We're saying have a great night. Take care.
And God bless, guys.